Okay, so today we're diving deep into a topic that's as universal as gravity and yet often as invisible as air: lying to ourselves. You know, that quiet act we sometimes unconsciously engage in like a game of hide and seek with our own minds. It's more deeply rooted than lying to others. Strange, right? We usually think of deceit as something sinister only when directed outward, but often the most persistent liar we face is ourselves. You walk alone on life's path, seeking truth everywhere: philosophies, books, ancient wisdom, even podcasts and gurus, forgetting that the first truth to confront lies comfortably within reach: yourself. It's a raw, unpolished truth, often uncomfortable, often inconvenient, sometimes even painful, but it's the foundation upon which all honest understanding must be built. Imagine constructing a towering skyscraper on a foundation of sand. It may rise, but it won't last. Likewise, a life built on self-deception, however soothing or elegantly crafted, is inherently unstable. You might even laugh at the absurdity of such a fragile design, as if you'd spent years carefully decorating the walls of a house that was always going to collapse. And yet, that house, those illusions, felt like home. That's the strange part. So, why do we deceive ourselves? It's not a glitch in the human operating system, but a complex, often ingenious defense mechanism. It shields us from pain, from dissonance, from truths we aren't ready to face. Self-deception is the mind's way of saying, not yet, not today, maybe tomorrow. Historians still debate whether ancient societies had a clear concept of self-deception like ours, but its presence echoes through centuries of literature, tragedy, and philosophy. Think of Greek tragedies where characters are undone not by external enemies, but by illusions they clung to, believing what they needed rather than what was real. A little-known fact: early Stoics like Epictetus emphasized the rigorous examination of one's judgments, knowing that flawed perception leads us astray. It was a radical move in an era where many trusted immediate impressions. You listen to the inner whispers, the polished rationalizations, the gentle self-justifications you weave, much like a gifted architect constructing an ornate castle of illusions, complete with firm walls, elegant windows, and a pleasing view. And sometimes, in rare clarity, you might catch yourself chuckling softly, knowingly, at how earnestly you believed your own fabrications. There's a strange comfort in realizing that you were both the playwright and the audience of your own fiction, nodding along to your own lines. Now zoom out a bit. Think about history's monumental moments and how self-deception played its part. Consider the strategic missteps of brilliant military minds. Julius Caesar, for instance, a paragon of resolve and control, surely wasn't immune. He crossed the Rubicon, plunging Rome into civil war, a move he likely justified as being for Rome's greater good. But deep within, could it have been sheer ambition, a thirst for ultimate power? Historians still argue about Caesar's awareness of his motivations. Was it patriotic sacrifice or masked personal desire? Or both? A curious pattern emerges. Leaders across eras, emperors, revolutionaries, reformers, often believed they acted from noble ideals, when all signs pointed to ego, miscalculation, or self-interest. It's like you insist you're walking the straight path, only to realize you've been circling the same cul-de-sac all along, wearing deeper grooves with each repetition. Sometimes the trail of footprints you leave behind is not progress but a spiral. And when the truth dawns, you might laugh ruefully, maybe because truth has a habit of arriving not with fanfare, but with a wink and a nudge. But let's not dismiss self-deception as mere weakness or moral failing. It's a deeply ingrained part of our psychological wiring. From childhood, we're steeped in beliefs fed by family, culture, memory, schooling, religion, and the world around us. Over time, these beliefs root themselves so deeply that questioning them feels like tearing down your entire mental architecture, brick by careful brick. That's why it's so hard It's not just a thought, it's your identity, stitched into your every decision. Stoic philosophy reminds us, control lies in how we perceive, choose, and interpret. And what could be more within our control than our own beliefs? The irony is that recognizing our capacity to deceive ourselves is the very key to freedom. It's the first brave step toward reclaiming that control. It's like standing in your cluttered mental attic, finally deciding to clean it. Yes, it's daunting. But as you sift through the dust, you'll discover both chaos and beauty, and perhaps you'll laugh again, this time with love, because this peculiar mess is yours, and now you've chosen to see it. And that act of seeing becomes a form of liberation in itself. The real power of self-deception lies in how convincingly it can turn illusion into certainty. Those little lies we tell ourselves, the small distortions, become familiar echoes in the mind. Whispered often enough, they begin to sound like truth, like a catchy tune you can't stop humming, even if it's off-key. These personal myths can cover anything: your abilities, your motives, your memories, or the real shape of a problem you refuse to acknowledge. We're skilled at building stories to excuse, protect, or preserve an image of who we think we are or who we desperately want to be, and history is full of such self-made narratives. Empires were founded, wars launched, and revolutions stirred by people convinced of their righteousness, blind to their flaws. Historians still debate to what extent these actors believed in their noble purposes or simply crafted illusions. They needed to believe. A striking fact: the human brain naturally seeks out information that confirms existing beliefs. It's called confirmation bias, and it makes self-deception not only easy but inevitable unless we stay vigilant. And vigilance requires humility, the willingness to admit that the story you've told yourself might not be true. That's where growth begins. So you walk along, telling yourself familiar tales, stepping confidently forward until you trip. And that stumble, awkward as it is, becomes your best teacher. You wince, reflect, then laugh. Because in that fall, something breaks a facade, perhaps, and what's left is humbling and real. And from there, you rebuild. Not from illusion, but from truth. Self-deception isn't just a momentary lapse in judgment, it's a deeply rooted web, quietly spun by the biases we carry, often without realizing it. It's like walking through life with tinted glasses you didn't know you were wearing. Seeing the world colored not by what is, but by what you expect or want to see. The human brain, for all its genius, wasn't designed to perceive unfiltered reality. It was built for survival, for speed, for making decisions on the fly with incomplete information. You can almost hear it now, the soft hum of inherited assumptions, the gentle whirring of mental models stitched together by memory and culture, shaping what you notice, how you interpret, and even what you forget. It's efficient, yes, but not necessarily accurate. Historians still debate whether ancient humans fully grasped the mechanisms of their own minds, but the evidence suggests that the seeds of cognitive distortion have always been there. Even in the earliest texts from Egyptian proverbs to Babylonian tablets, one can detect hints of flawed reasoning and selective belief. A striking early observation of confirmation bias came from the 17th century philosopher Francis Bacon, who noted that humans are more likely to see what they want to see and ignore what contradicts their beliefs. He didn't have the terminology we use today, but he understood the architecture of self-deception that stand before the mirror of your mind, and what reflects back might not be the truth, but something gentler, more flattering. That's the brilliance and the quiet danger of self-deception. You are both the artist and the audience, painting a portrait designed not to confront, but to comfort. You aren't lying, not exactly. You're editing, curating, selecting. You're telling yourself a story you can live with. Let's talk about confirmation bias, one of the most potent engines of this curated reality. Once you adopt a belief, your mind starts scanning the world like a heat-seeking missile for anything that supports it. While brushing aside or discrediting what doesn't, you surround yourself with confirming evidence friends who agree, headlines that validate, memories that align. It's like building a house with only one kind of brick, then wondering why it leans. During World War II, the German High Command fell into this trap, buoyed by hubris. They relied heavily on internal reports that confirmed their strategic genius, ignoring external warnings and signs of collapse. Historians continue to debate how much this mental filter accelerated their downfall, but the pattern is clear. What we believe becomes what we seek, and what we seek becomes our reality. This isn't just ancient history or wartime psychology. Even today, many societies, both past and present, discourage dissent. In ancient Mesopotamia, for example, contradicting royal decrees could be seen as heresy. Dissent was dangerous. So people learned to believe what was safe, not what was true. You might do the same. You plant familiar seeds in the garden of your mind, ideas that harmonize with what you already think, and weed out anything that might disturb the landscape. But bias doesn't only dictate what you notice. It also transforms how you understand what you see. Imagine two people witnessing the same street incident, a minor car crash. Later, they recall wildly different accounts. Not because either is lying, but because each has filtered the event through their own memories, expectations, and subconscious narratives. This distortion becomes particularly vivid when you turn the lens inward. That inner voice so persuasive rushes to explain away your failures, to cast them as flukes or learning experiences, while attributing successes to your genius and grit. Ancient Roman generals famously blamed defeat on the will of the gods or on treacherous omens rather than tactical errors. Today we call this the illusion of control. You think you're steering the wheel, but often you're just along for the ride. And when reality bumps you off course, you might even chuckle surprised by your own earnest belief in control. Then there's the self-serving bias. This one's especially slippery. You take full credit for every triumph, your skill, your insight, your hard work, yet when things go wrong, the blame naturally lands on someone else, or maybe fate. You're the hero in your victories and the innocent bystander in your defeats. History is full of monarchs who embodied this logic, claiming divine favor when they conquered and blaming betrayal or bad luck when they fell. Even in everyday life, this bias thrives. When couples are asked separately to estimate how much housework each person does, their totals almost always exceed 100%. Each sincerely believes they're carrying the load. It's absurd yet deeply human. You script yourself as the protagonist in a world that revolves around your efforts and good intentions. And there's something almost childlike in that belief, endearing, even in its simplicity. Still, if we're ever to grow past the illusions, we need to see ourselves clearly. Stoic philosophy offers a pathway. Observe your own mind as if from the outside. Cultivate the skill of detached self-inquiry. Don't judge. Don't flinch. Just notice. What am I thinking? Why did I react that way? What part of this belief is habit, and what part is truth? This mental discipline, like physical training, isn't a one-time revelation, it's daily work. You condition your mind to catch its own tricks. Not to punish, but to understand. Because while self-deception can cushion discomfort, it also blocks light. It makes the world smaller. It makes you smaller. Picture yourself in a darkened room. The windows are covered by thick curtains, your biases. Each time you pull one back, even a little, more light enters. You begin to see the room for what it really is, not what you assumed it to be. The shadows retreat. Shapes become clearer. And then, maybe, a quiet, almost involuntary laugh escapes you, not mocking, not bitter, a laugh of recognition. A laugh that says, "Ah, so this is what I was hiding from. And all along, it was me." Continuing our story about the illusions we create for ourselves, Let's now delve deeper into the subtle and silent art of rationalizing our flaws. You know this terrain well, perhaps too well. We're masters at transforming mistakes into wise decisions made under difficult circumstances, and reframing weaknesses into unique traits that make me who I am. On your winding path of self-discovery, you'll encounter elaborate internal structures, cathedrals of justification, built so meticulously, stone by stone, that even you begin to believe in their sacred truth. You hear the whispers of reasoning echo through the chambers of your mind, the polished arguments crafted with care, like a skilled lawyer defending their favorite client. You, historians still debate whether ancient sages explicitly warned against the perils of self-justification, but it's clear that recognizing personal imperfection has always been a cornerstone of true wisdom across cultures. A little-known psychological fact: rationalization is classified as an ego defense mechanism. Subconscious sleight of hand your mind performs to ease emotional discomfort when confronted with unpleasant truths. And the mind, ever so clever, is remarkably good at this game. It's astonishing, isn't it, how gracefully we become connoisseurs of self-deception, refining the lies we tell ourselves until they shimmer with plausibility, like polished stones. Passed down through generations of internal dialogue, rationalization is a sophisticated form of self-deception, far more elegant than denial or outright fabrication. It cloaks itself in logic, dresses itself in reason, and walks with the air of confidence. You act, and then you rewrite the story so that the act seems justified in hindsight. You eat that extra piece of cake and say, "I deserve it, I've had a long day." Never mind that you've said that 4 days in a row and the scale knows the truth. You skip an important task and murmur, "I work best under pressure," until the deadline collapses on you like a roof you forgot to fix. During a quiet season, it's not just personal. History is flooded with grand rationalizations. Consider the Fourth Crusade, launched to reclaim the Holy Land, but redirected to sack Constantinople, a Christian city, under the thin veil of purging heretics. Historians still debate how much of this redirection was driven by opportunism, and how much was post hoc moral gymnastics crafted to soothe the conscience of the victors. Even in ancient cultures, the public admission of fault was often seen as weakness, a stain on personal and collective honor. So self-justification became not only personal, but institutional, cultural, systemic. You may think you're making a purely rational decision, but perhaps you're simply shielding your ego from the scorching light of self-awareness. You walk the path of choice, and sometimes, without even realizing it, you take the gentler detour, the one paved with soft, well-worn explanations that allow you to avoid facing the inconvenient and unpolished truth. What makes rationalization particularly insidious is that it often operates beneath your awareness. It doesn't knock on your door, it slips in quietly through the side window, barefoot and invisible. You hear that familiar voice whisper, "Just this once," or "Everyone does it," and without protest you nod. These small internal agreements accumulate over time, stacking themselves into pillars that support the architecture of your worldview. You tell yourself you don't have time to exercise, but the truth is you're afraid of discomfort. You don't pursue that dream because life got in the way, but maybe you're simply afraid of looking foolish. You cling to bad habits, calling them just part of who I am, as if identity were static and unyielding. History is littered with rationalizations, cloaked in noble language. Intellectuals once defended slavery by claiming it was the natural order of things, even suggesting it was beneficial to both master and slave. An elegant lie in the service of brutal power. A curious fact: in behavioral psychology, studies show that when people perform actions contrary to their core values, they often change their beliefs afterward to reduce cognitive dissonance. Instead of admitting hypocrisy, the mind rewrites the story. And so, you may think you're living authentically, but perhaps you're simply living inside a narrative you've crafted for comfort, not truth. You may be acting in a play you wrote, directed, and starred in, never noticing that the stage is bolted shut from the inside. To pierce through this veil of illusion, you must develop something rare and powerful: radical self-honesty, a sharp-edged clarity that cuts through self-protective fog. Become a detective of your own mind, track your thoughts, interrogate your motives with compassionate persistence. When your brain offers you a convenient excuse, stop, pause, ask yourself, is this really true, or is it merely safe? This isn't a pleasant exercise. It's a discipline grueling at times, deeply humbling, sometimes heartbreaking. But it's also where real growth begins. The Stoics understood this. Seneca, the Roman philosopher and playwright, practiced daily self-examination, not to punish himself, but to illuminate his weaknesses with the lamp of reason. Historians still discuss how consistently the Stoics lived by this discipline, but their principle remains crystal clear. Do not look away from what is. Face it, sit with it, and let it refine you. Interestingly, in many Eastern spiritual traditions, meditation serves a similar purpose, not just to still the mind, but to see the mind. To observe thoughts rise and dissolve like clouds, to watch them without judgment or entanglement, to notice the subtle games of rationalization playing out behind the scenes. You hear the call to awaken, to rise from the comfort of mental shelter, no matter how warm and familiar it feels. It is remarkable, truly remarkable, how intricate and how confining these mental sanctuaries can become. Sometimes they resemble fortresses, sometimes prisons, and yet here lies the paradox. Accepting your flaws without needing to justify them is not weakness. It is the beginning of true power. You admit that you are not perfect. You accept your humanness. And in doing so, you free yourself from the exhausting burden of illusion maintenance. It's like finally admitting you don't know how to swim, and that honest moment opens the door to learning, to flotation, to buoyancy. You stop pretending, you stop flailing, and you begin to move forward in stillness and strength. That is the quiet liberation. You feel it, you hear it. The subtle, almost imperceptible sound of something loosening inside you. The cheers of inner freedom, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that smiles inwardly. The kind that laughs not with cruelty, but with understanding. Because the truth, once faced and accepted, doesn't hurt the way you thought it would. It breathes, it calms, and it lifts, and in that stillness, you laugh. A gentle, honest laugh, the kind that echoes through the hidden corridors of your mind, sweeping away the cobwebs of old justifications. You laugh because, at long last, you are free, not perfect, not invulnerable, but real, and that is enough. We've discussed how biases and rationalization distort reality. Now, we'll explore another crucial aspect of freeing ourselves from self-deception, embracing discomfort to confront the inner falsehoods we so carefully protect. You know, facing the truth about ourselves isn't always a pleasant experience. It's like tending to a healing wound. It might ache, it might itch, and at times it may look worse before it looks better, but all of this is part of the deeper restoration process. You walk alone on this path, and you'll feel the cold winds of truth blow through you, making you shiver not just from temperature, but from exposure. You hear the echoes of resistance from deep within, the voice of the old self, brittle and stubborn, clinging to illusions like ivy on the crumbling walls of your psyche. Historians still debate whether ancient societies had psychological methods akin to therapy to cope with such discomfort. The Greeks had catharsis in their theater, perhaps a communal exorcism of inner pain, while the Eastern mystics used silence and solitude as spiritual diagnostics. Yet what is clear is that human beings, across cultures and epochs, have always sought to avoid pain, physical, emotional, or existential. A little-known fact: in traditional medicine, many healing systems speak of the healing crisis, a temporary worsening of symptoms that marks the body's intense attempt to flush out toxins. Healing often gets messier before it gets cleaner. It's funny, in a darkly poetic way, how adept we are at chasing comfort, even if it leads us deeper into delusion. Why are we so afraid of discomfort? The answer lies in our biology. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. It's an evolutionary feature that once helped us survive, but now often holds us back. However, in Stoic philosophy, discomfort isn't something to run from, it's something to lean into. It's a signpost, an invitation to grow beyond your current limits. When you face a painful truth, like realizing you're not as kind, as disciplined, or as brave as you thought, the first reaction might be shame, regret, even rage. That's discomfort. But the Stoics, ever practical and brave, urge us to embrace that sting. They understood that growth often hides behind the pain we fear most. Ancient Roman Stoics would subject themselves to cold baths, voluntary hunger, and long periods of silence, not out of masochism, but to train the mind to withstand life's unavoidable trials. Historians still debate how effective these practices were in cultivating virtue, but their intention was clear. Do not run from pain. Study it. A curious fact: modern psychological studies have revealed that people who accept their negative emotions, rather than trying to suppress or fight them, tend to enjoy better mental health outcomes. Acceptance is strength. You are standing before a closed door, the door of truth, and to open it, you must accept that a cold wind might rush through. It may sting, it may make your eyes water, but paradoxically, that chill is the key. And you laugh, softly and knowingly, because you've realized discomfort is not the enemy, it's the teacher you've been avoiding. To truly confront your inner falsehoods, you must develop radical transparency with yourself. This isn't easy. It means asking yourself uncomfortable questions and sitting with the answers, even when they burn. Instead of saying, "I don't have time to exercise," ask, "Am I choosing convenience over commitment?" Instead of "I can't learn this skill," ask, "Am I more afraid of looking foolish than of being ignorant?" This is the slow peeling away of self-protective layers, excuse after excuse, until you reach the raw, unfiltered truth. Look to Galileo and Copernicus, giants who faced the immense discomfort of opposing dogma. They endured ridicule, isolation, and existential fear, but they did not abandon the truth. Historians still debate the intensity of the social pressures they withstood, but no one questions the courage it took. A curious fact: intelligence agents are trained to question their own thinking rigorously, because even one unnoticed assumption can result in a catastrophic error. You hear the ticking of the clock. Each tick is a choice: hide behind an illusion, or look it in the eye. Accepting discomfort also means letting go of the illusion of control. You may think your self-deceptions protect you, offer you safety, but they don't. They are comforting prisons. The walls are padded, yes, but still walls. Real freedom comes when you stop pretending that control over everything is possible. Life is uncertain. Pain happens. People leave. Mistakes are made. Stoic wisdom teaches us to distinguish what is within our control, our thoughts, our actions, from what is not: other people, outcomes, fate. This shift in perspective can feel brutal at first, but eventually, it lightens your soul like shedding a heavy coat on a warm spring day. Consider the Cold War. Both sides had to live with the constant discomfort of nuclear risk. It was terrifying. But it was also the very acceptance of that discomfort that allowed space for diplomacy, restraint, and ultimately, change. Historians still debate whether fear or reason had the greater influence on peace negotiations. A little-known fact: in survival training, students are taught that those who accept the discomfort of thirst, cold, or hunger without panic have higher chances of survival. You are trudging along a rocky, uneven path, and each blister, each stumble, is an act of embracing discomfort. But at the end of that path, the ground softens, the sky opens, and you find not comfort, but clarity. Ultimately, to embrace discomfort in order to confront your inner falsehoods is an act of profound courage. You are not choosing the easier way, but you are choosing the truer one. It's like diving deep into the cold ocean to find treasure. Your muscles tense, your lungs strain, but you descend anyway, because you know that at the bottom lie the pearls of truth and self-knowledge. And when you resurface, you are changed. You hear your own applause, not loud, but steady, not boastful, but proud. And you laugh not out of amusement, but out of recognition. Because that discomfort you once feared has transformed you into a stronger, freer, more honest version of yourself. And nothing, not fear, not comfort, not illusion, can take that away from you. We've journeyed through the many layers of self-deception, from subtle biases to sophisticated rationalizations, and even the discomfort of facing unwelcome truths. Now we arrive at the culmination of that journey: liberation through radical self-honesty. This isn't just a concept, it's a way of being, a daily practice, a profound commitment to living without pretense. It's the path to the serenity and inner wholeness that Stoic philosophy has long revered. You walk alone on this path, but you are not lonely. There's a quiet strength beneath your feet, a whisper in the wind that brushes your face with a cool clarity. You feel a refreshing breeze of freedom sweep through you, a lightness that begins not in your body, but in your soul. You hear it now, the distant yet unmistakable song of liberation, the music of a spirit that has found peace by surrendering to the truth. Historians still debate whether ancient Stoics like Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius ever reached the state of radical internal clarity. But what is certain is that they sought it with relentless intention. They understood that peace wasn't found in external success or praise, but in the deep, undisturbed well of truth within. A little-known fact: many ancient cultures, from the ethical teachings in Confucianism to the self-examination practices of Egyptian mortuary texts, emphasized honest reflection as a gateway to enlightenment. Even the Indian Upanishads speak of knowing the self as the highest form of wisdom. It's beautiful to think that across time and geography, the desire to peel away illusions and stand in raw truth connects us all. Radical self-honesty is not a momentary burst of clarity, it's a lifelong practice, a discipline of the soul. It demands vigilance, courage, and the willingness to stare directly at what you'd rather turn away from. It's not just the big lies you face, but the tiny, daily ones, the excuses, the justifications, the "I'm fine" when you're not. It's like tending to a sacred space. You sweep away the mental clutter, rearrange the chaos of emotion, and polish the windows of perception so that light can enter, again and again. The history of religious reformers like Martin Luther shows how individuals challenged entire institutions, themselves in pursuit of deeper truth. They didn't just protest dogmas. They confronted their own complicity in illusions. Historians still debate their motives, but what remains is their unwavering push towards spiritual honesty. A curious fact: positive psychology studies consistently find that individuals with high self-awareness and personal integrity report greater overall well-being. Not because they're perfect, but because they're aligned with reality. You hear the echo of clarity, now not loud, but resonant. The echo of a mind no longer bloated with noise and self-defense. Living with radical honesty reveals a powerful truth. You don't have to be flawless to be worthy of love or belonging. You don't have to construct a persona, wear 1,000 masks, or edit yourself to gain approval. You are free to show up exactly as you are, messy, beautiful, unfinished. And that, paradoxically, makes you more whole. When you accept your imperfections, you extend the same grace to others. Your relationships become real. Most importantly, your relationship with yourself becomes authentic. You are like a statue carved with intention, and the cracks in your surface, they are not flaws, they are history, proof of survival, symbols of depth. The Japanese kintsugi technique comes to mind, using gold to repair broken pottery, turning damage into beauty, imperfection into strength. The lives of great leaders often tell this same story. Abraham Lincoln stumbled through many political defeats, personal losses, and long periods of doubt. Yet each failure shaped him, gave him a deeper understanding of human suffering and resilience. Historians still debate how much those failures forged his character, but none deny the wisdom that emerged from his trials. A curious fact: in traditional Zen practice, monks are taught that to know themselves is not to idealize, but to witness all aspects, the light and the shadow, without judgment. You hear a long sigh of relief, not from your lungs, but from your spirit. The kind of sigh that only comes from having nothing left to hide. Radical honesty isn't just about self-acceptance, it's also a gateway to unceasing growth. When you stop pretending you know everything, you finally become teachable. When you own your blind spots, you become clear-eyed. You're no longer imprisoned by the cycle of blame or avoidance. Instead, you become an apprentice to your own evolution. Just like a martial artist who studies every misstep to sharpen their technique, you study your own reactions, decisions, and emotions. The lives of scientists and inventors reflect this mindset beautifully. Thomas Edison, for instance, famously said he didn't fail, he just discovered 10,000 ways that didn't work. Historians still debate whether he truly said it, but But the principle stands. Embrace error as part of the path. A curious fact: in artificial intelligence, learning models constantly analyze their own performance, identifying mistakes not to punish them, but to refine themselves. In a way, radical honesty is your own internal algorithm updating, adjusting, learning. You're not racing against time to achieve perfection. You're racing toward better understanding, day by day, layer by layer. And that's the kind of race worth running. In the end, liberation through radical self-honesty is a gift only you can give yourself. It is the ultimate act of self-respect, choosing truth over comfort, clarity over illusion. It asks much of you, but it gives more than it takes. Its rewards are timeless: a calm mind, a soul at peace, and a life rooted in something real. You hear the bell now, the bell of awakening, the bell of a life lived without disguise. Its sound is not loud, but unmistakably pure. So there you have it, my friends. We've walked this winding road together, through biases and illusions, through discomfort and clarity, toward a home within ourselves that cannot be shaken. Stoic philosophy teaches us that to govern our inner world is the highest form of freedom. And now you know, embracing discomfort, shedding illusions, choosing radical self-honesty, none of these are punishments. They are invitations. They are acts of profound liberation. They are gifts of peace you give to your soul. Continue your journey, one step at a time, with courage, with curiosity, and with truth in your heart. End of script. Thank you for listening, everyone.